Lucas has always been a man of reason, of facts and proven data. As a historian specializing in the medieval period, he dedicated himself to unearthing documents and artifacts that would reveal the true history of the world. However, while leafing through an old manuscript found at an antiques market, he came across something that challenged everything he knew. The untitled book was full of enigmatic passages, with encrypted symbols and mentions of a secret order that had apparently never been dismantled. The Knights Templar. Alongside these mentions, there was another name, darker and less well known, the Illuminati. Intrigued, Lucas delved deeper into the yellowed pages and, as he did so, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if he was destined to find those words. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but an invisible force was guiding him, pushing him towards a mystery greater than anything he had ever studied. The history of the Templars and the Illuminati had always been shrouded in legends and theories. Many said that the Templars had become extinct at the beginning of the 14th century, after the execution of Jacques de Molay, their last Grand Master. Others claimed that they had infiltrated various institutions, such as the Catholic Church, the French government, and even European royalty, remaining silent and invisible, like a hidden force. But what Luke read in that manuscript suggested something much more complex. What would have happened if the Templars hadn't been destroyed? What if, instead, they were working in secret, architecting a new world behind the curtains of history? He found himself absorbed by these questions, and a thought began to form in his mind. Perhaps this conspiracy wasn't just ancient history, but something that was still alive, operating in the shadow of humanity. Determined to understand the meaning of those symbols and passages, Luke set off on his first investigation. His destination was Jerusalem, a city full of historical and mystical layers, where the Templars had left their mark. There, he believed, would be the answers to the puzzle. When he arrived, however, it wasn't the beauty of the city that struck him, but the feeling of being watched, as if something or someone was waiting for him. Exploring the ruins and ancient temples, Lucas found a familiar symbol engraved on an underground wall, hidden from the view of tourists and even archaeologists. It was a symbol similar to the one on the manuscript, a combination of interlocking triangles and circles. His heart raced. He was closer to the truth than he had ever imagined. But there was something else, something he couldn't explain, a feeling that something was watching him, lurking in the shadows. With a mixture of excitement and apprehension, Lucas tried to decipher the inscription, but when he touched the stone wall, a deep rumble echoed through the temple, and the secretly hidden passage opened up, revealing a crypt with a dense, muffled atmosphere. He hesitated for a moment, but his curiosity was stronger. The crypt was covered in symbols similar to those he had found in the manuscript, and in the background was an object covered in a velvet tarpaulin. When Lucas removed the canvas, he was paralyzed. What was there was not just an artifact. It was an artifact that belonged to another era, probably something that belonged to the Templars themselves. But before he could study the item in more depth, a distant scream interrupted his thoughts. He looked around, but he was alone. Or so he thought. He felt a presence, something unnameable. Before he could react, the sound of approaching footsteps forced him to run out of the crypt. Someone else knew about that place, and more importantly, someone was willing to make sure he didn't leave with his findings. Heart pounding, Lucas managed to escape. But he knew that this would not be the end of his journey. On the contrary, he had just been introduced to a world he barely understood, and now, more than ever, he needed to find answers. But one question persisted in his mind. If the Templars were alive and well, where else could they be hiding, and what were they really planning? After the incident in the Jerusalem crypt, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that it had been the first of many steps towards a mystery that surpassed any academic research he had ever carried out. He knew that the key to understanding what the Templars and the Illuminati were really planning was buried somewhere in the world, somewhere where no one else could see it. With that in mind, he set off for the next place mentioned in his research, Paris. The city, steeped in history and symbolism, had been the scene of many key events for the Templars, including the persecution of 1307, when King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest and execution of many members of the order. For Lucas, Paris represented the next logical step. He would spend days exploring old archives, visiting historical sites and interviewing experts, But something nagged at him. Something was lurking, he could feel it, even in the busy streets of Paris. It was during a visit to the Church of Saint-Jacques-le-Boucherie, a site with strong connections to the Templars, that Lucas discovered another clue. In a little frequented chapel, he found an inscription that seemed to refer to an inner circle, a more select group within the order. This reference did not appear in any of the books he had studied. It indicated that, in order to join the circle, it was necessary to fulfill certain secret rituals, the ultimate goal of which seemed to be the creation of a new world order. The search for answers led him even deeper. He met other scholars who, like him, had delved into historical secrets. But what Lucas didn't know was that some of them were more involved with the Illuminati than he had imagined. His investigations led him to an elitist club, where members with great political and financial power discussed topics that seemed harmless at first glance, but which, for Lucas, were closely linked to the Templars' ancient plans. The situation began to become increasingly dangerous. During a meeting with a French expert on secret societies, Lucas was followed by a man in a dark suit who seemed to be watching his every move. When the expert revealed to him a crucial clue about the location of a Templar codex, an ancient text containing the last wills of the Templars, Lucas felt he was getting closer to the truth. But he also knew that, with each step, the risk increased. Lucas tried to make contact with the secret resistance he was beginning to discover, a group of individuals who shared his beliefs about the dangers of the Templars and the Illuminati. However, before he could reach any agreement with them, he was intercepted by mysterious figures in an alleyway, where a direct threat to his life was made. Those behind the conspiracy were beginning to move, and he needed to be more cautious than ever. He returned to his hotel, determined to understand the significance of the latest discoveries, but with the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. Now more than ever, Lucas knew that the truth was within reach, but he also knew that to get it, he had to be prepared to face whatever was necessary. And the question on his mind was clear. Was he ready to uncover the secret that could change the world? In the days following the incident in Paris, Lucas could no longer distinguish between what was real and what was paranoia. Every sneaky look, every dark corner seemed to hide something deeper and sinister. He had met with figures of power, but all were distant, unperturbed, as if they already knew what he was about to discover. The feeling of being followed increased. Even in his little apartment in Paris, he felt the walls were closer, more oppressive, as if time was closing on him. It was during a sleepless night that Lucas finally solved the last part of the puzzle. The Templar Code, the same mysterious text he had heard of, was now in his hands. He knew that if the information within that codex was correct, he would be facing the key that would reveal the global control network of the Illuminati and the Templars. It was a code of symbols, cryptographs, ancient passages that, when deciphered, brought to light an architectural plan over centuries. A plan to dominate the world, but not with brute force or military invasions. The goal of the Templars and the Illuminati has always been more insidious: to control minds, manipulate decisions, and above all, to control the great economic, political and religious powers in a silent and invisible way. Lucas read, almost frantically, the words that outlined this plan. Control of the currency, the creation of global crises to generate more chaos and thus achieve greater control, the manipulation of information so that the masses never know the truth. What he found made his stomach turn. The Templars and the Illuminati not only survived their historical condemnation, but had infiltrated the major centers of power around the world, manipulating and directing governments and corporations from the shadows. But it wasn't just that. What he learned was also more disturbing. The Templar Code indicated the existence of a group within the Illuminati who sought something even more sinister: a new type of society. A world order, not based on war or direct oppression, but in a global network of subtle control, where the masses, although they thought they were free, would actually be guided by an invisible force. They no longer wanted a physical empire, but an immutable domination where nothing could occur without their authorization. The magnitude of what Luke was reading paralyzed him for a moment. He had the power to expose all this, but at the same time, he knew that if he did, he would put his life in danger, as well as endanger the safety of everyone around him. But there was one last part of the codex he could not ignore: a warning. The resistance group, those who were fighting against the manipulation of the Illuminati, was being hunted. They were not only a secret faction, but a small army that tried to thwart the plans of the Order. Luke knew that for any action from this point on, it would be necessary to align with them. But as much as he sought answers, fate seemed to want to lead him on a more dangerous path than he ever imagined. During a raid to gather more information in one of the secret sites of the Templar Code, Lucas was surprised by an unexpected encounter. While searching in an underground library, a familiar voice called him. It was the French expert he had met with weeks before. But now, something was wrong. The expert looked different, darker. His eyes were fixed on Luke with a disturbing intensity. "You should have stopped earlier," he said, his words as cold as metal. "Now you know too much. What is at stake here is not something you or anyone else should understand. It's beyond us." Those words marked him deeply. Luke knew he had crossed an invisible line, but what terrified him even more was the fact that he did not know who he could trust more. The expert approached him, saying that there was a way to escape, to get away from all this. But at the same time, Lucas saw something in his behavior that didn't fit. A tension in the air, as if man was preparing to do something that could not be undone. Before Luke could react, the expert disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind an echo of words that still resonated in his mind. "You are in danger, Luke. They know you're here." The escape was quick, but Lucas's mind was overloaded. He was closer to the truth than I ever imagined, but with every answer I found, more questions arose. The resistance group was still lurking, but would he be able to join them before it was too late? In a remote corner of Paris, Lucas received one last clue. A clandestine meeting where the secrets of the Illuminati would finally be revealed. What would he do with this information? Would he continue his search or step aside to preserve his life and the lives of those he loved? One thing was certain: the game was intensifying, and Lucas would no longer be just a spectator. The last clue led Lucas to a dangerous area, a place where few people dared go. But after weeks of chasing, running away and discovering, he knew there was no turning back. The truth was within his grasp, and he needed to decide if he would have the courage to confront it. The venue was an old mansion in the heart of Paris, a decaying building, shrouded in an aura of mystery and silence. As he entered, Lucas felt a strange sensation, as if he had been there before. The mansion was full of symbols that he already knew well, symbols that were linked to the Templars and the Illuminati. Every step he took made the weight of the secret heavier in his heart. There, in the middle of the gloom, he found shadowy figures, but none of them were unknown. They were the same faces he had seen in his research. Figures of power, wealth, and influence. But what he also noticed was the presence of other men and women, mostly young and with expressions of determination. They were members of the resistance, those who had infiltrated the very center of power. Lucas, now more prepared for what was to come, felt that the time to act was now. With the data he had gathered, he had the opportunity to hack an internal communication system and send crucial information to the global media. What he did not know was that this decision would also place him at the center of a much more dangerous game. By revealing the secrets of the Illuminati, he would not only expose the greatest conspiracy ever existing, but also trigger a domino effect that would change the fate of millions of people. The moment Lucas pressed the button to send the message, he was hit by a series of light blasts. What happened next was a distortion of reality. Images of chaos, corruption, and manipulation spread throughout the world, as he, stunned, realized that he was no longer in control of his own history. The game, in fact, had never been about revealing the truth, but about who could control it. When the cries of resistance began to intensify, Lucas realized something that would leave him marked forever. Perhaps he had been just a piece on an even larger board. And the real power game was just beginning. The world, as he knew it, would never be the same. But the question that remained was, who, after all, was in control, and did we really know whom to trust? Share your opinion in the comments and tell us if you believe that these secret societies can exist. If you like this story and want to explore more stories like this, sign up for the channel and turn on notifications. The unknown still has much to teach us.